Welcome to my Expat Stories. Andrew's a 46-year-old high school history teacher from Vancouver. Divorced. Quiet. The kind of man who reads poetry on Sunday mornings and actually means it. He went to the Philippines, believing the universe had something waiting for him. And in a way, it did. Her name was Grace. She was beautiful, patient, and she never once asked him for money. Not a single peso. That's the part that got him. Because Andrew didn't just fall in love, he fell in love with the idea that he'd finally found someone who wanted him, not his wallet. $67,000 later, he found out how wrong he was. If you've ever believed that the universe sends people into your life for a reason, subscribe now and hit that like, because this story will make you think twice about every sign you've ever seen. Here's Andrew. I want you to understand something before I tell you this story. I'm not a stupid man. I teach AP World History to 17-year-olds. I've got a master's degree. I read. I think. I question things. I'm not the kind of guy who falls for obvious stuff, but I do believe in signs. I always have. My mum did too. She used to say the universe puts things in front of you for a reason. A song comes on the radio at exactly the right moment. A stranger says something that changes how you see your life. A book falls off the shelf and it's the one you needed to read. She believed that stuff with everything she had. And when she died, I kept that with me. It's one of the last pieces of her I carry. So when people say, I was naive, when they look at me like I'm an idiot for believing what I believed about Grace, I get it. I do. But you have to understand. For me, believing wasn't a weakness. It was who I was. I'm Andrew, 46, history teacher, Vancouver. Been teaching 15 years. Good at it too. Kids actually like my class, which is saying something for AP World History. I've got a daughter, Sophie. She's 19, lives with her mum most of the time. My marriage ended 4 years ago. Not ugly, not dramatic, just slow, like watching a candle burn down. By the end, there was nothing left. Sarah and I looked at each other one morning over breakfast, and neither of us had anything to say. We shook hands, split everything fairly. She moved to Victoria. I kept the apartment in Kitsilano. And then it was just me. The quiet was the hardest part. Not silence. Quiet. There's a difference. Silence is when nothing's happening. Quiet is when you notice that nothing's happening. And you notice it at 3 a.m, when you wake up and the other side of the bed is cold and you haven't spoken to another human being since Tuesday. I started looking online. Dating apps, Hinge, Bumble. Met a few women. Went on a few dates. Nothing clicked. Everyone was performing. Checking boxes. Scrolling through options like they were choosing a Netflix show. I wanted something real. Something that felt like it mattered. A colleague, Janet, she'd been to the Philippines the previous summer, came back glowing, showed me photos, white sand, turquoise water, little wooden boats with outriggers. She said it was the most peaceful place she'd ever been. Said the people there were genuinely warm, not tourist warm, actually warm. So I booked a trip, 3 weeks, flew into Manila, took a ferry from Batangas down to Puerto Galera. And the moment that ferry pulled into the harbour, something shifted in my chest. I don't know how to explain it without sounding ridiculous, but it felt like something clicking into place. Like a gear I didn't know was loose suddenly found its groove. The air smelled like salt and frangipani, and something else I couldn't name. The water was this shade of blue that doesn't exist back home. And I stood on the deck of that ferry, with my bag over my shoulder, and I thought, this is where something's going to happen. That feeling, that's important. Remember it. I found a little guest house on the beach, run by an older couple. The husband, Mang Rudy, was a former fisherman. His wife, Arling Carmen, cooked breakfast every morning. Pandesal with butter, eggs, garlic fried rice at 7 a.m. The smell of that rice would pull me out of sleep every single day. Warm, slightly crispy on the edges. A glass of fresh calamansi juice next to it. I'd sit on their little wooden deck with my bare feet on the sand and eat and watch the boats and think, this is it. This is the life. First few days I just explored, walked the beach, rented a little scooter and drove around the island. Stopped at roadside stalls for Halo Halo. Talked to whoever would talk to me. The locals were curious about me. A tall Canadian alone on an island. They'd ask where my wife was. I'd say I didn't have one. They'd laugh like that was the funniest thing they'd heard all week. It was on the 5th day that I saw Grace. I was at a small church near the beach. Not for a service. I just wandered in because the door was open and the architecture was beautiful. Old Spanish colonial. Wooden pews worn smooth by decades of hands. The light coming through the stained glass was doing something extraordinary to the dust in the air, and she was sitting in one of the back pews. Not praying. Not exactly. Just sitting, hands in her lap, looking at the altar with this expression I can only describe as searching. Like she was looking for an answer to a question she hadn't quite formed yet. She was 29, small, dark hair pulled back loosely, wearing a simple white blouse and a plain skirt. No makeup, no jewellery, nothing trying to get attention. And that was the first thing. Everything about her was quiet, understated, the opposite of what you'd expect if someone was trying to catch your eye. I didn't approach her. I sat 2 pews ahead, looked at the stained glass, listened to the silence, and after about 10 minutes she stood up, walked past me, and on her way out she glanced over and smiled. Not a flirtatious smile, not a practiced one, just a smile like she was acknowledging another person in the same space. That was it. That was the whole interaction. But something about it stayed with me the entire day. I went back to that church the next morning, and the morning after that. On the 3rd morning she was there again. Same pew, same quiet expression, same simple clothes. This time I sat next to her, not close, just in the same pew. We sat in silence for maybe 15 minutes. Then she turned to me and said, in perfect English, with a slight Filipino lilt, "You keep coming back." I told her I liked the light in here, the way it came through the glass. She looked up at the stained glass and nodded slowly. My grandmother used to say that light is how God whispers. And I felt it. That thing Janet had talked about. That warmth. Genuine warmth. Not performance. Not strategy. Just a woman sitting in a church talking about light and her grandmother. We introduced ourselves. Grace. Andrew. She asked what I did. I told her I was a teacher. She said that was a beautiful profession. Not in a flattering way. In a way that suggested she actually meant it. She told me she lived in the village nearby, helped her mother with the small sari store they ran. Her father had passed away 2 years ago. She said it simply, without drama, just a fact of her life. And then she changed the subject because she didn't want me to feel sorry for her. That detail, the way she moved away from sympathy, that hit me hard. We talked for an hour that first morning, about the island, about teaching, about the history of the Philippines, which she actually knew a surprising amount about. She'd read. She was curious. She asked me questions about Canadian history that no one in Vancouver had ever asked me. When we parted, she said she'd be here again tomorrow if I wanted to talk. I wanted to talk. Over the next week, we built something that felt, to me, entirely natural, entirely organic. We'd meet at the church in the mornings. Sometimes we'd walk along the beach afterwards. She showed me parts of the island I would never have found on my own. A hidden cove where the water was so clear you could see the coral 20 feet down. A mango tree her grandfather had planted that still bore fruit every season. A place on the rocks where she'd sit and watch the sunset and feel. She said, like the rest of the world didn't exist. Everything about her felt like a sign. The mango tree her grandfather planted. I teach history, roots, legacy, the way the past grows into the present. That felt like the universe winking at me. The hidden cove. The first time I saw it, the light hit the water in a way that reminded me of a painting my mum had loved. A Monet. Water lilies. The colours were the same. Grace couldn't have known that. There was no way she could have known that. But she did. Or at least the universe did. I know how this sounds. I know. But I'm telling you exactly what I felt. And what I felt was that everything was falling into place. Piece by piece. Like the universe was assembling something, and Grace was the centre of it. One evening, about 10 days in, we were sitting on her grandfather's rocks, watching the sun go down. The sky was doing that thing it does in Puerto Galera, where it turns every colour at once. Pink and orange and purple all bleeding into each other. And Grace was quiet for a long time. Then she said, almost to herself, "Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever get to leave this island." She wasn't asking me for anything. She wasn't setting anything up. She was just thinking out loud, sharing a thought, the way you do with someone you trust. But I heard it, and something in my chest tightened, because I was already starting to think about how I could help. That was the beginning. Not a request. Not a pitch. Just a woman watching a sunset and wondering about her life. And a man who believed in signs, believing that he'd just received one. The first time I sent money, It didn't feel like sending money. It felt like breathing. Grace and I had been spending time together for about 2 weeks when her mother got sick. Not dramatically sick. Not a hospital emergency. A quiet kind of sick. The kind where you need medicine that costs a bit more than you have. Grace mentioned it in passing one afternoon while we were walking back from the cove. Her mother had a chest infection. The pharmacy in the village had the antibiotics, but they were running low on stock, and the ones that worked best for her mum were at a bigger pharmacy in town. She shrugged as she said it. Small problem, she'd figure it out. I asked how much. She looked at me with this expression, part surprise, part something else. Like she hadn't expected me to ask. Like the question itself was unexpected kindness. Around 2,000 pesos, she said. Maybe a little more. I handed her the cash that same afternoon. Didn't make a thing of it. Didn't want her to feel embarrassed. Just slid it across the table at the sari-sari store while her mum was in the back room. Grace looked at the money, then looked at me. And her eyes did this thing. This slight glassiness, like she was trying to hold something back. Andrew, she said quietly, you don't have to do this. I told her I wanted to, and I meant it. Every single word. That first amount was nothing. A few dollars. But it opened a door. Not a door Grace pushed open. A door I walked through on my own. Over the next few weeks, she talked about her life the way anyone would. Naturally. Honestly. Her mother's store needed new shelving. The roof had been leaking since before her father died, and they'd been putting off the repair because of the cost. Her younger sister wanted to finish nursing school, but the fees were more than they could manage on what the store brought in. Each time Grace wasn't asking. She was just talking, sharing. The way you share things with someone you're close to. And each time I was the one who brought up the money. Each time I was the one who said, how much do you need? Let me help. And each time she'd do that thing, that hesitation, that look, like she genuinely didn't expect it. Like generosity was something she'd never quite gotten used to receiving. It was intoxicating. Not the giving itself, the feeling that I was the kind of man who could do this for someone. That I mattered enough to change someone's daily life. Back in Vancouver, I was invisible. A quiet guy in a staff room who ate lunch alone and went home to an empty apartment. Here, I was someone who could make a real difference. Someone who could ease someone's pain just by showing up. The universe had brought me here for this. I was sure of it. By the end of the third week, I'd spent maybe 4,000 Canadian dollars total, spread across a dozen small things. The antibiotics, the roof repair, groceries for the family, the nursing school deposit for her sister. Each one felt right. Each one felt like exactly what I was supposed to be doing. And Grace, for her part, gave back in ways that had nothing to do with money. She cooked for me. Simple meals, adobo chicken with rice, fish fresh from the morning catch, grilled over charcoal on the beach with calamansi squeezed over the top. The smell of that fish cooking, garlic and oil, hitting the hot grill, would fill the whole stretch of beach. We'd eat together at dusk, barefoot in the sand, and she'd tell me stories about growing up on the island, about her father, about the dream she used to have when she was small. One night she told me about a dream she'd had as a child. In the dream, a man came to the island, a man from far away, and he stayed. Not because he had to, not because he was trapped, because he chose to, because the island was where he belonged. I asked her if she remembered what the man looked like. She smiled, looked at me, didn't say anything. That silence, that loaded, beautiful silence. I replayed it in my head for days, sign after sign after sign. I flew back to Vancouver after that first trip. 3 weeks on the nose, went back to my classroom, went back to my routine, marked papers, drank coffee in the staff room, ate lunch at my desk, and felt nothing. Everything back home felt grey, flat, like someone had turned down the colour on my life. Grace and I talked every day on Messenger, sometimes for hours. She'd send me photos, the sunrise from her window, her mother's garden, the view from the rocks at sunset. Each photo felt like a letter, like she was keeping me tethered to something real, while everything around me felt hollow. I booked my second trip within 2 weeks of getting home. This time I stayed for a month, moved out of Mangrudy's guest house and into a small rental closer to Grace's village. A little concrete house with a fan that rattled and a mattress that was too thin and walls that the geckos treated like their personal motorway. But it was near her, and that was all that mattered. The spending continued. Naturally. Quietly. Grace's sister's nursing fees. A second-hand motorbike so Grace could get to the bigger market town for the store. New stock for the sari-sari shop. Each time the amounts crept up slightly. Each time it felt organic. Each time Grace didn't ask. I want to be clear about that. She never once sat me down and said, "Andrew, I need money." Not once. Not in 8 months. Every single peso I sent, I offered first. Sometimes I didn't even wait for her to finish describing a problem before I was already working out how to fix it. That's what made it feel real. That's what made it feel like love. The first crack appeared around month 4, and I didn't see it as a crack. I saw it as something else entirely. I was at the market in town, buying fruit, papaya and mangoes, and I saw Grace there, across the street, standing outside a phone shop, talking to a man, not a relative, not an old friend from school. I could tell by the body language, the way she was leaning in slightly, the way the man was smiling at her with his whole face, the way she laughed at something he said, her hand coming up to cover her mouth, the way it always did when something genuinely surprised her. Something cold moved through my stomach. I didn't confront her. I didn't even mention it, because the moment I saw it, my brain did something extraordinary. It immediately found an explanation. A cousin she hadn't told me about. A business contact for the store, someone helping with the nursing school paperwork. My mind filled in the blanks so fast and so completely that by the time I got back to the rental house, I'd almost convinced myself I hadn't even seen it. Almost. But a small thing stayed. A splinter somewhere behind my ribs that I couldn't quite reach. Grace and I had never talked about the future explicitly. Not in the way couples do. Not, "Where do you see us in 5 years" conversations. It was more subtle than that, more woven into the fabric of our daily life. She'd mentioned wanting to open a proper shop someday. Not just a sari store. A real one, with shelves and a fridge and products people actually wanted. I'd nod and picture myself helping her do it. She'd talk about her sister finishing nursing school and coming back to the island. I'd imagine being there when she graduated, celebrating together. Everything was we, without either of us ever saying we. One evening, around month 5, we were lying on the beach, stars overhead, the kind of sky you can't see in Vancouver. Millions of them, scattered like someone had thrown a handful of diamonds at black velvet. The waves were small and rhythmic, almost hypnotic. Grace rolled onto her side and looked at me. The starlight was catching the edge of her face. And she said something that I have turned over in my mind 1,000 times since. "Andrew, I think some people find each other across oceans, not by accident, not by luck. The universe arranges it. Like the tide, it just pulls." I looked at her and I felt something crack open in my chest. Not painful, the opposite. Like a window opening after a long winter. "I think so too," I said. She smiled and turned back to look at the stars. And we lay there in silence for a long time, the waves doing their quiet work on the shore, and I thought, this is the most real thing that has ever happened to me. Month 6 is when the amounts got bigger, and still, she never asked. Her mother's chest infection came back, worse this time. Needed hospital care in Batangas City, the ferry, the taxi, the admission fee, the medication. Grace told me about it on the phone, her voice small and worried. And before she'd finished the sentence, I was already on my laptop, looking up how to transfer money from my Canadian account to her Philippine one. $12,000. Gone in 3 transfers over 2 days. I didn't hesitate. Not for a second. After that, it was the store renovation. Grace had found a spot in a better part of the village. Better foot traffic. A proper lease. But it needed work. Walls painted. A new counter. Shelving units. A second-hand fridge that actually kept things cold. The quotes came in bit by bit, each one reasonable on its own. 8,000 here, 5,000 there. I paid them all. Then her sister's tuition again, a semester behind, needed catching up. Another 6,000. I was keeping track in a notebook, not because I was worried about the total, because I liked seeing the list, liked seeing what I'd built, what I'd made possible. It was like a ledger of love. Every entry proof that I was doing something that mattered. By the end of month 6, the notebook showed around 45,000 Canadian dollars, and Grace had never once, not a single time, initiated a conversation about money. She was either the most selfless person I'd ever met, or she was the best I'd ever encountered at something else. Entirely. I wasn't ready to consider the second option. Not yet. The thing about red flags is they don't look like red flags when you are inside the story. They look like details. Small inconsistencies that your brain quietly files away and forgets about. Grace's phone. She had two of them. I noticed it one morning when I was at her place early, before she was awake. One phone charging on the bedside table, another in a drawer she kept locked. I asked her about it later casually. She said the one in the drawer was her old phone, broken screen. She kept it because her father had given it to her. Made sense. I moved on. The visits. Grace said her sister in nursing school lived in Cebu City. I offered to fly there with her one weekend to visit. She said the timing wasn't right. Her sister was busy. Exams, maybe next month. Next month came. Still busy. I suggested we video call instead. Grace changed the subject so smoothly I almost didn't notice. Almost. The man at the phone shop. I saw him again a week later. Different spot, same smile, same body language. This time Grace saw me watching and smiled back, completely unrattled. Said she was just checking on a phone for the store. Each one on its own was nothing. Together they were something I wasn't willing to look at, because looking would mean questioning everything. And everything was the only beautiful thing I had. The discovery didn't happen all at once. It happened in layers, like peeling something back and finding something worse underneath, and then peeling that back and finding something worse still. It started with the sister, Grace's sister, the nursing student in Cebu City, the one whose tuition I'd been paying, the one we'd never visited, the one who was always too busy for a video call. I was in town one afternoon, waiting for Grace at the market. She was late. I had my phone, nothing else to do, so I did what anyone would do. I opened Facebook and searched for Grace's sister's name, the name she'd given me months ago. Nothing came up. No profile, no photos, no nursing school tagged posts. Nothing at all. I searched again. Different spelling, different combinations. Still nothing. A cold feeling started somewhere at the base of my spine and began moving upward. I called Grace. She didn't answer. Called again, straight to voicemail. I sat on a concrete step outside the market for 20 minutes, scrolling through everything I could find. Grace's own Facebook, her posts, her photos, looking for the sister, looking for any trace of her. There was nothing, not a single mention, not in months of posts. When Grace finally called back, I asked her about it, casually, carefully. Told her I'd tried to find her sister online. Couldn't find anything. Grace paused, just a beat, 1 second longer than normal, and then she laughed. Said her sister didn't use Facebook, said she was private, said some people just weren't on social media. It was smooth, practiced. And for about 30 seconds, I almost believed it. But the pause, that 1 second pause before the laugh, it stayed with me. I didn't say anything else that day, or the next. I just watched, quietly, carefully, the way you watch when you're hoping to be wrong, but something in your gut is telling you that you're not. 3 days later, I found the phone, the one in the locked drawer. The one she said was her father's old phone with a broken screen. Grace had gone to the store, left the key to the drawer on her bedside table. I don't know if it was an accident or if she genuinely didn't think I'd look. Either way, I opened it. The phone wasn't broken, the screen was fine, and it was full of messages, not just a few, hundreds, stacked up over months, from multiple numbers, some in Filipino, some in English. And some of them were from men, different men, talking about money, talking about transfers, talking about Grace in ways that made my stomach drop through the floor. One conversation, from a number saved as Alte Rosie, was a back and forth about amounts, targets, timelines, how much each client was sending. My name was in there, Andrew in capital letters, next to a number, my number, the amount I'd sent. I sat on the edge of her bed for a long time after that, the phone in my hands, the room very quiet except for the geckos clicking on the walls, the fan rattling its one note over and over, and I read through everything, every message, every number, every conversation. Grace wasn't running this alone. There was a network, 8 Rosie coordinated, multiple women, multiple men, multiple countries, the sari store, the nursing sister, the sick mother, the roof, the renovations, all of it scripted, all of it rehearsed, and all of it designed to make the mark feel like he was choosing to give, because men who feel like heroes don't stop giving. That was the strategy. Grace never asked because she didn't need to. She just had to let me become the kind of man who wanted to. I confronted her that evening. She came back from the store and I was sitting on the wooden bench outside, the phone in my hand, the one from the drawer. I held it up so she could see. She stopped walking. Just stopped. Mid-step. And for the first time in 8 months, the expression on her face was something I hadn't seen before. Not guilt exactly. Not shame. Something more calculating. An assessment. Like she was running through options in real time, deciding which version of this conversation to have. She chose the direct one. "So you found it," she said. Not, "What is that?" Not, "That's not mine." Not, "Let me explain." Just, "So you found it." I asked her how much of it was real. Any of it. The church, the conversations, the way she looked at me. She sat down on the other end of the bench, took off her shoes, put her feet in the sand the way she always did. And she looked at me with an expression that was almost kind. "Andrew," she said, "you wanted a story. I gave you a beautiful one. That's not a lie, that's a gift." A gift. I asked about the sister, the nursing school, the mother's hospital visits. Grace shrugged. One shoulder. Slight. Casual. "My mother is fine, she's been fine the whole time. And I don't have a sister." The words landed in my chest like stones dropping into still water, one after another, rippling outward. I asked her about the man at the phone shop, the one I'd seen twice. She smiled, actually smiled. "That's my boyfriend. His name is Dante. We've been together 3 years. He lives in Manila. I see him when I go up there." 3 years. The entire time. The entire time I was sitting on rocks watching sunsets and believing in soulmates, she had a boyfriend in Manila. I didn't shout, didn't cry, didn't do any of the things you'd expect. I just sat there. Very still. The way you go still when your body doesn't know what to do with what it's just been told. "The dream," I said finally. "The one about the man who comes to the island. Was any of that real?" Grace looked at me for a long time, and then she said something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. "That's a story I tell them all. Them all." 2 words. My brain heard them, and something behind my eyes went very bright and very quiet at the same time. I stood up, walked to the beach, sat down at the waterline where the waves could reach my feet. And I stayed there until it was dark. The next morning I was on the bench with my phone. Grace had gone somewhere. I opened Messenger and typed her a message. 3 words. The 3 words from the cold. Open. The ones I'd read that morning on the beach while the water was doing its impossible blue thing. I typed, "Was any real?" She read it. The tick marks went to 2. Delivered. Read and then nothing. No reply, not that day, not the next, not ever. I spent 2 days trying to sort it out. Called my bank in Vancouver, explained the situation. They were sympathetic but firm. The transfers had been authorised by me, voluntarily, from my account, with my credentials. There was nothing they could reverse. I'd essentially gifted the money. From a banking perspective, that's not fraud. That's generosity with bad judgment. I went to the local police station in town, a small building with 2 officers, and a fan that worked better than mine. Sat down, told the whole story. The younger officer took notes, nodded a lot, sympathetic face. Then he looked at me and said very gently that this kind of situation was extremely common with foreign visitors, and that unfortunately there was very little they could do unless Grace had actually stolen something from me directly. Sending money voluntarily, he said, was not theft, it wasn't theft. That word, theft. Like it was the only category that mattered. Like the 8 months of manufactured emotion, the fake family, the fake dreams, the entire architecture of lies didn't count unless someone had physically taken something from my pocket. I contacted the Canadian Embassy in Manila. They directed me to a website. The website directed me to a form. The form directed me to wait. I didn't wait. I booked a flight home. I'm back in Vancouver now. Teaching. Marking papers. Eating lunch at my desk. The apartment is the same. The quiet is the same. Sophie calls on Sundays. My colleagues ask how my trip was, and I say it was fine. The total was $67,000 and change. I know because I went through my bank statements when I got home. Every transfer, every amount, every date, laid out in neat little rows on my laptop screen in my kitchen at 2 a.m. with a glass of water and nothing else. $67,000 to a woman who never asked for a single peso. I think about that sometimes, about how clever it was, how elegant if you want to use that word. Grace understood something about men like me that I never understood about myself. That the most effective con isn't the one where someone tricks you into giving. It's the one where someone makes you want to give. Where giving feels like the point. Where it feels like proof that you're exactly the man you always hoped you were. She didn't steal from me. She made me donate to her. And the worst part of me, the part that still believes in signs and soulmates, and the way light comes through stained glass, that part of me isn't even angry. It's just quiet. The way it was before I left. This is my expat stories. Sometimes the universe doesn't send what you're looking for. Sometimes it sends what you deserve to find.